Did you know that in Mongolia, the father's first name is the family's last name? Don't you think that's unique? I just share that because I actually wanted to share some of the most unique naming conventions, the naming rules in different Asian countries. My full name is actually Fairlane Cruz Raimundo. So in the Philippines, the first name comes first, and then our middle name, it has to be our mother's maiden name, and then my father's last name, of course, is Raimundo. For those of you who don't know, the Philippines was colonized by the Spaniards for 300 years, and so they mandated us to ditch Filipino names and adopt the Spanish last names. So that's how we ended up being a Raimundo. That's a Spanish last name. And then my mother is a Cruz, which is also a Spanish last name. I do not know what is my original Filipino last name, unfortunately. I never asked. But okay, so aside from that, just Asia in general has some of the most unique naming conventions. Number one, in East Asia, they always put the family name first. So basically, all countries in East Asia would put their family name or last name first. And this actually started in China when they adopted the Confucianism. So in Confucianism, your place in your family and then the society is more important than your individual identity. So you first have to be identified based on your clan or the family that you belong to before they know your last name. Now, that's an important development because from that, other cultural practices and beliefs came about. Like one is our respect towards our elders. It's a very important part of our culture. We have huge respect towards our parents, towards our grandparents, uncles and aunties. Answering back, ignoring them is not an option. You have to be very respectful. You have to recognize that they are always right. If they scold you, you can't say anything. That's changing a little bit. But yeah, so from China, it sort of spread out into other parts of East Asia, like Korea and Japan, primarily because of the geography. They're very, very close to each other. But throughout history, it has sort of been adopted to the rest of more parts of Asia, and then even Hungary actually uses that naming convention. Okay, number two, Mongolian last name is their father's first name. So in Mongolia, the surname and family names are two different concepts. Okay, so there's the family name and then there's the surname. Originally, they actually do not have a last name. So they just have a given name, whatever is your first name, and then that's it. Now, family names, or what they call ovog, is the representation that they have to identify the family or the lineage. So the ovog is usually decided by the family and then passed on to their children. So because it's for the longest time sort of took the place of a last name, usually they choose a name that has significant meaning to the family. So it could be their religion or the place where they're from or something that they do together. On the other hand, so that's their family name. Okay, the family name is sort of what they choose to represent their family. And then the surname, the concept of a surname actually didn't come about until Russia came. So they have the Russian patronymic style. Mongolia didn't have, again, a surname before they came. So the Russian patronymic style is taking the father's first name as the child's surname. Okay? Since the first name are usually unique or tailored to a person, the surname wouldn't last but one generation because when you marry, then the father would have a unique name and that would become the surname of the child. So the order of Mongolian name would be family name, which is what the family chose to identify them and passed on through generations, then the surname, which is the first name of the father, and then the given name. Okay. Number three, first names usually have a positive meaning to attract positivity to the child. So you don't just name your child whatever. Usually they would think of something, a value, or something that they want their child to become. So if if they want their child to become rich, then they will choose a word that means rich or something. A good name brings good luck. That's the belief. So they want the name to represent that luck, to represent the future of their child. In East Asia, many countries don't use alphabet. They have their own writing system. In the case of Mongolia, they have their own alphabet. For China, Korea, Japan, they have characters. So each syllable actually means something else, which is how they choose the name of the child. Sometimes they would also consult a fortune teller and ask the fortune teller what's the most fitting name for their child. Number 4, China and Korea have a tradition of using a generation identifier in their first names. So generation identifier would be one generation, so one set of siblings, for example. Usually they would use the common first syllable. That would become the identifier, the generational identifier. An example of this would be the Jong sisters. These are K-pop idols in Korea. Jessica and Crystal Jung. However, their actual Korean names are Suyeon and Sujong. Okay, Suyeon and Sujong. So obviously, Su is the generational identifier. Another is Jet Li. His actual full name is Li Lianji, and then other siblings are Lian Li, Lian Ping, Lian Sheng, and Lian Zhu. So Lian is actually the generational identifier. Number 5, the Japanese government has a list of kanji characters that can be used for names. So Japanese actually has different writing systems. They have hiragana, katakana, and kanji. However, only the kanji characters is used as names. So the kanji is the one that was adopted from the Chinese writing system. So they sort of created like a list of names that you can use, and then the parents will choose from that, and that's what they will name their children. The supposed objective of it is to avoid the use of inappropriate names. Now, of course, that has been modernized, so there's a lot of names that are already being used by combining hiragana and katakana, but mostly they still use kanji. So I hope you found that very interesting. I did. I think my favorite part was the Mongolian one. I had no idea that they had a different family name, different surname. I thought, just like Western and just like Filipinos, that was the one and the same. The last name and the family name is one and the same. And so I also found it interesting that they decided that they would decide on their own what the family name is going to be. Something that resonates and represent their clan would be their family name, and then the surname would be the father's name. I guess the Russian chose it that way simply because they needed to implement like a last name, and so just like choose the father's last name, the father's first name, that would be your last name. Okay, so if again, I'm not really an expert in the naming conventions in Asia. If you have anything to share, if you have any corrections, you have any clarification, do leave it in the comment section. Thanks.